in my opinion, straightening your natural hair is actually the most underrated protective hairstyle that exists.
My hair grows because I'm not afraid to wear the same hairstyles as I did when I was a kid. In other words, I'm not afraid of the childish hairstyles.
Main thing I see is people saying not to do wash and goes if you want to retain length. But for me, it was the opposite. When I started doing wash and goes more frequently, I started retaining more length than when I was doing protective styles.
The protective styles that you are relying on might be the reason why you're struggling to retain length. Something I learned recently in my haircare journey is that not all forms of protective styling are equal. Some of them are actually quite destructive, while some of the best ones I see rarely mentioned online. By the way, this is the second part of this ranking. Watching part 1 will help you understand this one, so check that video out first. Quick disclaimer, there are many ways that you can mitigate the damages caused by these hairstyles, but for the sake of simplicity, I am going off the way most people will install and maintain them. If you have found a way to make these work for you, please feel free to share with the rest of us in the comment section. Let's get into the ranking. These are the categories that we will be working with. It's important for me to mention that I do not consider anything below protective but to be actually protective. To me, these are simply hairstyles, and while they can be helpful in terms of convenience or have their pros, the purpose of a protective hairstyle is to both minimize manipulation and reduce hair's exposure to damaging conditions. Therefore, a hairstyle that itself introduces damage cannot be protective. I'm starting off this video with a controversial one. There has been a rise in naturals proclaiming that exclusively wearing their hair pin straight has helped them retain length. Let's start with the pros of self-process. It is true that there is a multitude of problems that arise when you're trying to grow long, kinky textured hair, and being a straight natural solves 2 of them. Number 1, it will practically eliminate the single strand knots forming over your ends and leading to breakage. And number 2, your hair will feel more conditioned because the sebum will have a much easier time traveling down your hair strands. But all of this comes at a big cost. I cannot stress this enough. The level of heat required to make textured hair look like this on a regular basis will damage the structure of your hair.
Listen, the same bond that is broken in your hair during a relaxer is the exact same bond that is broken in your hair during extreme heat that causes heat damage. It's called your disulfide bond. It is a permanent change that happens in the hair. It's the same thing that's broken and changed when you get relaxer. It's the same thing that's broken and changed when you've been bleaching a Hello Kitty out of your hair and your curls don't pop anymore. That's what's going on, baby.
Heat training is simply early heat damage. Heat damage is cumulative, meaning that your curls will progressively get looser until they either break off or you cut them off yourself. Hair that is heat damage is not as able as healthy hair to reabsorb moisture. So heat damaged hair will be chronically drier, and this is especially a problem in very textured hair that is already dry to begin with. Heat damaged hair has also been observed to be more prone to breakage when combing the hair, and there is a difference in the way that heat damages hair from one ethnicity to the other. For example, Asian hair loses more protein when straightened at high heat than Caucasian hair. It's likely the natural hair is even more prone to structural damage than Asian hair, given that our hair again is more dry to begin with. I could go on and on, but this is worthy of a video on its own, so I'll stop here. And if the hair is worn loose, there is not much protecting of the ends anyway. So while I recognize it's very possible to retain length as a straight natural, I had to put it into split ends everywhere because that length will inevitably come with a lot of heat damage. On to mini twists and mini braids. Both are excellent when it comes to length retention and actually have very little cons. You have all-time access to your scalp, which makes frequent washing possible. There is virtually no tension because number 1, they are typically installed by whoever is wearing them. And so you have direct feedback when it comes to tension. And number 2, there is no added hair adding stress to your scalp or to your hair strands. They also allow you to keep your ends very moisturized and tucked away.
The majority of the clients who get natural twists done, they are seeing supreme transformation with their hair. They're seeing maximum length retention and density retention too.
The only potential con, and I experienced this recently, and this is more so with twists, not at all with braids, is the potential for the hair to lock. I recently got mini twists done for vacation, and I kept them in for 2 weeks, and I washed them about 4 times. Don't do that. Do not do that. It's not because your hair is mini twist that you can just wash them and condition them and be fine for 2 weeks. Don't do that. Don't keep them in for too long. It's especially during the washing process that they're likely to lock. So be mindful of that. Mini braids are solidly healthy waist length hair, but when it comes to mini twist, I feel like because of the potential for the hair to lock, I have to put it into protective but way ahead of the other hairstyles already in this category. Loose buns are my personal favorite. I don't understand why no one mentioned them ever in these conversations.
First things first, and I know you don't want to hear this, but you are going to have to master the art of a low tension style. Reason why you're not seeing your hair grow is because you're just touching it too much. You need a low manipulation style, a low bun. If you are going to do a bun, make sure it's not too tight.
Big emphasis on loose. It's not a loose bun if you can feel any sort of tension on your scalp or in pain in any way. So that's your first pro. If it's a loose bun, there is no tension. When I say bun, I am referring to a hairstyle where you tuck away your ends. If your ends are tucked away, they won't be able to rub against fabric or any other material, which will help them stay moisturized and will prevent breakage. Sooner or later, you will have to wash your hair, and that is another pro. These kinds of hairstyles indirectly encourage proper hair care because you cannot keep them in for months at a time. The only potential con that I can think of is that if you do these using two small black hair ties, especially the one with like a part of metal in them, you might be putting some stress on your hair strands, especially if you keep doing the exact same bun every day and don't change position. And a very easy fix is going with those satin scrunchies because they don't put any kind of stress on the hair. Loose buns are going at the top into healthy waist length, but I feel like I have to put it at the bottom of this category just because you have to manipulate your hair every day to put it into the bun. So there is a tiny bit more chance of mechanical damage, but this is just me trying to be fair.
We cannot escape, we cannot come out. Mama!
The next hairstyle on my list is slick back buns. I feel like you can always tell when someone does slick back buns over and over because they tend to have a lot of breakage here in the front. And if they have been doing it for a very long time, you'll even see a receding hairline.
Gosh, Imani, your edges are coming back. No, baby, the edges are still very much gone. To my knowledge, a lot of the damage is permanent, and I think you guys are just seeing the hair growing over the bald spots. At this time, I'm not really doing much except for limiting tight hairstyles. But yeah, just a little update for ya and a reminder to loosen up that ponytail.
Obviously, there is an excessive amount of tension required with this hairstyle. That alone would put it all the way at the bottom of the ranking, but I don't think that the problems even end there. All the gel that is used is not only drying for the hair, it's also potentially irritating to your scalp. I think part of the reason why so much breakage happens is also because the hair is styled wet when it's at its most fragile. Therefore, slick back buns go into big chop. Another hairstyle going into big chop is Afro Puffs. The people who under my last video said that I'm doing propaganda against black cultural hairstyles are probably going to love this one. These have the exact same problems as slick back buns. I really want to stress the fact that a high amount of tension on your hairline over and over again is going to result in traction alopecia. And in case you did not know, black women have the highest incidence of traction alopecia. Depending on the studies and sources that I've seen, it's anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of black women that suffer from some form of traction alopecia. And this is almost certainly due to our hairstyles. The thing with Afro Puffs is that your ends are exposed, which is not that bad because, you know, your hair is up in the air, so they're not rubbing against anything, but the hair being exposed will probably lead to some sort of single strand knots. I just really want to take a second to emphasize that the point of these videos is not demonizing these hairstyles. I am not telling you to never do an Afro Puff again, but I do believe it's important that we can make informed decisions. If you know the potential risks associated with certain hairstyles, you can try to mitigate them, or you can actually choose to do them less often. For example, I love braids. I personally keep braids for special occasions because I love them. I think they look very good, and I know this will ruffle some feathers. It's not because something is cultural or beautiful that it's necessarily healthy or good. In my last video, I talked pretty negatively about braids, but it was within the context of protective styling. A lot of people push back against the notion that braids might be damaging, and this is my mistake, but I did not mention the studies that I found while making the video, so I will be doing it now. And again, you're completely free to dismiss them. I am just providing the information for those whom it might interest. The first study tracked frequent and occasional braiders to assess how damaging braids actually were. Frequent braiders are people who got their hair done more than 8 times a year, and occasional braiders are people who got their hair braided less than 2 times a year. They found that frequent hair braiding led to significant hair damage, more cuticle loss, thinner hair shafts, and reduced tensile strength. Tensile strength is the maximum amount of stress that your hair will be able to withstand before breaking. So for example, the hair of the frequent braiders would be more susceptible to breakage when combed out. This aligns with my personal experience. I used to constantly get my hair braided, and I believed it was protecting my hair because every time I took the braids out, my hair would appear longer, but my ends would break off really easily, and I used to think that it was happening because I have kinky hair, but no, my hair was just really damaged from the braids. But to get back to the study, the frequent braider group also showed a higher incidence of traction alopecia. I also found these 2 different reports in which the effects of braiding on textured hair is studied, and in both, it is reported that frequent twisting of the hair, the way you do when you are braiding your hair, reduces its strength. Both of these reports were done on African hair. There's also this study where they examined 600 South African women and 600 school-age African girls, and both groups showed a higher incidence of traction alopecia. As a matter of fact, 32% of the women were experiencing traction alopecia. The traction alopecia prevalence was higher in people that were using hair extensions, which to me implies that it's not just the tension applied during the installation of the hairstyle, but also the weight of the extensions. There are so many of these. There is a study done in Cameroon, another one done in Sudan, and both of them also show a higher incidence of traction alopecia in people who will regularly get their hair braided. There might be a link between braided extensions and a very specific type of traction alopecia called CCCA that disproportionately affects Black women. And lastly, there is the matter of scalp health. According to a study done in London on Black women and their haircare practices, on average, women who wear braids and weave are wearing these hairstyles for 2 months and washing the hair up to every 32 days, while loose naturals average 14 days before washes. I already talked about this in my haircare routine video, but there are studies showing that scalp health drastically improves in individuals, even those with textured hair, that wash their hair more often. It is not good for your scalp to go long stretches without washing your hair. Of course, all the studies and report that I mentioned are linked in the description box. Next hairstyle on my list are Braids-Outs and Twist-Outs. These styles are not long lasting, so you will pretty quickly have to wash and re-moisturize your hair again. And they stretch your hair, which is good for length retention. I don't really know what to do with these because I don't think that they're a protective hairstyle, but I also don't think that they're damaging. You are manipulating your hair, but there is no actual red flag, so I will just rate them in relation to other hairstyles in this ranking. I don't think it should be anywhere near silk presses, but it's not worthy of being next to mini braids, so it's going in beneath the trim but quite far off. From what I've seen and from personal experience with wash and goes, whether or not you're able to retain length with them depends on how loose your curl pattern is. For some people, and oftentimes those people have a looser curl pattern, wash and goes are a decent low manipulation hairstyle. You set it, you leave it alone, and you can get a week out before having to rewash it. But for those of us with a tighter curl pattern, wash and goes are often synonymous with tangling and with single strand knots.
So the wash and go style, this style was originally created by and marketed for type 3 curl. The benefits of wash and go, specifically minimal breakage and healthy defined curls, mostly applies to looser curls. With tighter coils like mine, wearing your hair in its natural state, you'll see more fairy knots and breakage.
My worst wash days were always after doing wash and goes. So again, this is not a protective hairstyle, but it's far from being the worst offender in this list. So let's put it in. We need a trim after a braid out and twist out. Alright, that's my full ranking. Which one of these hairstyles do you wear the most and where would you rank it? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.